Uncertainty brief. Well, Paula and I had so much fun doing the sprint with the lives. I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy it, I got to say, but we did great. And I got to give props up to Paula because she had some technical issues in the back end and she's being a whiz at solving all of that. So thank you. We've decided to keep this up for a little longer, but as a weekly thing. Daily is a lot more work, especially when you're trying to deliver on clients and stuff.
Yep.
So welcome. I'm Susan. Paula, great to see you today. How are you doing?
Great to see you again. I'm great. I am great. Yeah.
Awesome. So we thought we would have a little bit of fun though. I mean, if you can't have fun with
Mhm.
life, what's the point, right? And so as we're serving clients and we're getting the stories in, we thought we'd do a little bit of an homage to Ann Landers. And we talk about the Dear Susan and Paula story that came in recently. So what do you think, Paula? Should we read it?
Yeah, let's just read it. I mean, one of the things is that during the lives is Susan and I both would get questions from clients. They'd see something and they'd, can what about this? And so we thought, why don't we just come on, answer those questions? So I tell
Well,
you what, I will read it and I'll let you start kick off with the answers.
no, you're switching it
Yeah.
up. We talked about this. Dear Susan and Paula.
The numbers don't line up. Everybody's telling me it's all fine. The money's coming in, but I'm still losing sleep, worrying it's all a mirage. My CMO says our campaigns are killing it and our performance numbers look strong, but we're running two offers at the same price point and nobody can agree which customer came from which offer. Finance is seeing activity in Stripe, and that's not showing up in our dashboard. So I can't connect new sales to our marketing. And I'm getting reports from three different tools. They all disagree with each other. And all we do is debate about attribution. It's getting us nowhere. And so this person's like, I don't need more software or a prettier dashboard. Who hasn't felt that? I need clarity. And the question, how do I know which numbers to trust and get my whole team working from the same version of the truth without risking my revenue in the process? Find confused but profitable.
How many times have we heard this question? I feel for confused but profitable because it is the source of truth and the conversation about that.
Yeah.
It's the conversation about the metrics. Often I find that we are talking about a founder led company
Yep.
who is looking at the bank account. We won't even go into I really want to talk about cash flow and
I know.
forecasting and some of these pieces, but we won't talk about that today. But I really do want to discuss that because you've got three or four different people and it's hard. I mean, let's face it, right? When you have a
Yeah.
marketing campaign going on, and I know you're the expert, I've just seen the arguments in the boardroom and the conversation.
Oh, don't get me started on attribution. We'll be here for a day. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
But it's true.
Yeah.
And this dashboard says this number and that dashboard says that number. I've been in calls and conversations and meetings where you get to a pre-approved KPI dashboard set. Everyone knows the source of truth, the definitions for the number. We've already talked about what the numbers will mean, right? There's the what and
Yeah.
then there's the now what. And all of a sudden, to throw the entire conversation off, somebody sitting around the boardroom table says, I don't like that number. I don't believe it. Which takes the conversation completely 90 degrees.
Because
And
now
you're,
you're
of
justifying.
course, and nobody can get to the questions and the conversation around the number, which is really important. What does it actually mean?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, and there are in in data and data management, there are decisions that we make about how we're going to categorize the data. And what I find, and this is not just a small company issue. I have seen this issue walking into, $100 million companies, and they're looking at their data, and A plus B does not equal C, it equals M squared minus F. And they can't figure out why. And what's happening is we have different definitions of the data in different places. The worst one I ever saw was um, in the same platform, in the same software system. And it was in my own company. And we had transitioned from one, so at the time I was running an agency and we ran marketing campaigns for dozens and dozens of companies all the time. And we had moved from one vendor to another vendor that gave us more robust reporting. Well, we got to pulling the reports for the first time, and there were two different ways that you could go in to pull reports. And some of the data we needed came through door A and some came through door B. So we pulled the reports. And my analytics guy comes to my door and he's like, they're not the same numbers. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, this report tells me the client got a 37% open rate. This report tells me the client got a 39.5% open rate. Same campaign, same day, like the same raw data being interpreted differently. And I called support. I'm like, which number do I believe? They argued with me that they weren't different. They argued with me. It took us 6 weeks of looking at these numbers. And I was like, okay, what we're going to have to do, we then had to pull the reports. We had to choose what we felt was the source of truth, pick one, and then pull the data that we needed and share that data and trust that it was accurate. It took about 6 weeks. I called back them. I said, I want to talk to your sales engineers. And they said, why? I said, because this data is wrong. And it wasn't that the data was wrong. It was that the way the data had been defined was different. And so, what most of us don't understand in a system is that when we're pulling the numbers in the back end, there are assumptions built in.
Correct.
Just like your website analytics. A visit counts as a new visit after X amount of time has passed between clicks. If you say 15 minutes between clicks means they're starting a new visit, and I say more than an hour, we're going to get very different data. Right?
All based on the same raw data.
All based on this. We're going to get very different answers from the same raw data. Yeah. And so I think you nailed it in terms of defining the data or defining the assumptions. And sometimes you just got to hold the line on those.
The other piece for that, because the source of truth, understanding, so KPIs, metrics, dashboards, right? The source of truth, where you're pulling the numbers from, agreement across the team in terms of the formulas that are going to be used on the raw data is very important. But I get really annoyed at one other thing.
And I think I know where you're going, because I think I'm thinking the same thing. Go for it.
Yes, probably. So the government just dropped in Canada. The government just dropped a budget.
Yep.
First budget in a long time. And I was up this morning eating my breakfast while watching the news and scrolling through the feed and stuff. And so you see the tickers. I mean, I know the ticker tape pieces and the conversations. They're only like 50 characters or whatever number of characters long. But it drives me nuts. Because it said things like 40,000 job loss. But there's no context to that. The next piece under it did not elaborate on that. Well, that's 40,000 public service worker job losses over 5 years by attribution and buyouts. It's not automatically 40,000 people just lost a job today.
Well, and not only that, but can I add, over the pandemic in Canada, when Canada was our country was boasting, oh, we've got job gains, those job gains were coming from government hiring. The government was hiring to maintain employment in the country. Those aren't real jobs. And I think we added a lot more than 40,000. I don't know the numbers. But all that context, you're right, is so important. So
which why do you think for the marketing campaigns or the operations numbers, or like you have to, the number in and of itself is just a number. You've got to know what's behind it. What are the biases, assumptions, stories?
Well, and the other piece is you also have to know the purpose for which the number is being used.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Can I double down
So,
on that one? Oh, yes.
oh my God, because we throw out these numbers and they are big numbers and they're incendiary numbers, right? And we do it to gain attention.
Yeah.
We do it, we live in a world where the more extreme and hyperbolic we can be, the more likely we're going to get attention on social media. And we come from this archaic belief that any attention is good attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, anytime you're covered in the news is good. Doesn't matter if you're covered for being a mass murderer, your name's in the news, people know who you are, right? Brand
Trump.
recognition. But that's, I don't think, so much the case anymore. But we do. We have these numbers. And so to bring this back to what you were saying about being in that boardroom and having that one person go, I don't like that number, I don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
That individual very likely has a vested interest in the number and using the number to further their own departmental agenda, personal agenda. The CMO is always going to want the campaign numbers to look good. The CFO is always going to want the balance sheet to look good. Your COO is always going to want the productivity numbers to look good. And so each of those individuals is going to have a vested interest in measuring the numbers they know they can make look good and tying those numbers to outcomes. The CEO is always going to want the bank account to look good. They're always going to want the shareholder value, right? So
Hence confused but profitable.
Yes, absolutely. And so you've got all of these competing tensions in a business. The amazing thing about those competing tensions is that when we acknowledge them and we allow them to play out, they give us balance in our business, right? You want a marketer who's advocating to get the word out and to put the money in to get the word out. And you want a CFO who's pushing back and saying, how are you going to measure value? How are you going to measure impact? That doesn't mean that the CFO should be making marketing decisions, but the CFO should be holding marketing to account. And I think what we do, unfortunately, is we allow power dynamics to get in the way. And suddenly you have the CMO telling the COO how to deliver there are boundaries, but the tensions could be good. But I think from confused but profitable's perspective, the really important piece is for them to have a clear idea of what they want to measure and how they believe that these things align, and do they trust that these things align to outcomes, right?
So a couple of things are coming to mind as you're talking about this, and one of them is, in business we often talk, a lot of us who do strategy and whatnot, usually because our clients are coming to us with one problem or one issue, confused but profitable. But it is the dynamic and the interplay and the intersection with all of these different parts that have to work in unison, right? You just mentioned so many of them in terms of this person has the subject matter expertise. This person needs the information. This person's job is to question and hold accountable. And so you're looking at process, you're looking at people, you're looking at profit, you're looking at all of these things that have to really fold in together. And when you've got a business, that's what's important. And so coming back to my second point now, the other element that really comes to me when we're talking about somebody saying this number is the one, this is the one that I believe, really reminds me of something I was listening to on the weekend. So I was listening to a podcast by Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO. You may or may not know it.
I love that. I love that show.
It's fun, isn't it?
It's fun. Guests. He has some great guests.
He does. And so he was interviewing, in this particular case, Kamala Harris. And great interview, very, very fun to listen to. But there was one part in particular that I was reflecting on as you were talking, and that was that there was a debate between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and it was back in like 2008 or some such thing. Not U.S. politician noting, so I don't know. But he was talking about horses and bayonets, which is the phrase that came out of the debate that was memorable. And she was talking about it in terms of, how a sentence or a phrase or something that's very vivid, very emotional will really stick with you. And she was linking it into neuroscience and the part of the brain that remembers things. And so when I come to it from I'm telling a story with these numbers, and I want to be able to make good business decisions. How do I tell the story that suits me best? Right. That's what you're talking about. The bias that I have, and I bring, and that's okay. And I want to be able to protect my turf a little bit and be challenged by it and be able to present the facts. But how do we, even from a marketing and communication standpoint, get through all of our messaging pieces? Because it's a crowded marketplace out there. There's a lot going on. Right? Why does the news and little ticker tape try to make it incendiary?
To get attention.
To get attention.
Yeah. That's a great full circle loop, because it is those little moments where someone says something that really connects with your brain, and that will stick. And it could be completely inaccurate. I mean, the crazy thing is that fact could be complete lie. And yet, because of the emotional connection that we make when we hear it, we integrate that into our beliefs.
Yeah.
And once we've done that, and it's an almost subconscious thing, it's really hard to move someone. I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody who was absolutely convinced of a fact that you could prove mathematically, with calculus, with basic addition and subtraction, logically, through video and photographic evidence, was not the truth of what happened. But they were so tied to that belief that they had embodied that they just refuted all evidence to the contrary.
Yes. Back when I was younger, that was my father. He was convinced that people were around at the time of the dinosaurs, and he used Fred Flintstone and Dino as his example. No, I was a lot younger then, so he might have been BSing me. I don't know.
Let's hope. I mean, there were people around at the time of the dinosaurs, so he kind of, he was right.
But he was.
So and I think that's what Kamala Harris was talking about in that portion of the interview, was about how, not the truth or the not truth of it, but how these little slogans, right? And we've seen it, again and again. Politicians giving in the Canadian election, axe the tax, axe the tax. You couldn't hear a political debate without hearing axe the tax. I mean, we love rhymes, right? We love the rhymes. We love nicknames, insulting nicknames, even better. But alliteration, I mean, these are all linguistic tools that writers and playwrights and, frankly, con men have used for generations to anchor a thought or a belief in someone's mind. It's a rudimentary or very crude form of manipulation. And that's all you could hear. And the only time that axe the tax stopped was when Mark Carney, who is now our prime minister, who made a very smart strategic move, said, okay, it's gone. We axed the tax. Now what do you got to stand on? And so there is the risk and the reward, right, from that. And we see it in marketing as well. We see it with tools, with data tools in particular. I remember, and I love HubSpot, big HubSpot fan. It's a fantastic piece of software. But I remember there was one annual report that they came out with, and they came out with many of these, but this one stuck in my mind. Companies that write 40 or more blogs a month tend to do better in their list growth and their engagement. And they had all of these other things that they were aligning to 40 blog posts a month. But then you go and you say, okay, what companies are writing 40 blog posts a month? And how do they differ in profile from the companies that aren't writing 40 blog posts a month? Any guesses?
I would imagine that they have dedicated marketing teams and they're substantially larger already because I don't know about you, but a lot of other smaller firms that I'm aware of have a tendency to be busy fulfilling as opposed to writing 40 blog posts a month.
You got it. You nailed it. They were large companies. They were venture capital funded. They had fully staffed marketing teams who were paid to do nothing but write blog posts all day. And they supported those blog posts with advertising dollars that most of HubSpot customers did not have, um, partner dollars and co op dollars that their customers did not have. And so you had all these small companies desperately trying to write 40 blog posts a month to get their lists to grow. And they didn't have any of the other recipes for the cake.
Correct.
None of the other ingredients were there. And that, unfortunately, I think that's the risk with numbers. I don't think we've answered, though, confused but profitable's question. We've only made them feel worse. So,
well, I was going to say, we're coming up to the end of the 20 minutes that we wanted to do for this. And poor, confused but profitable, who does at least have cash in the bank. So yay for them. That's a good thing. But if you were to offer them two pieces of advice, things that they could ask, question, do, what would you recommend?
The first thing I would recommend is to simplify. So stop tracking all those numbers. Stop tracking all those numbers. You're the owner of the company. You don't care. But the reality is your job is not to optimize marketing. Your job is to make sure marketing is delivering sales. So simplify what you look at. What was your revenue? What's in your pipeline? How much of what's in your pipeline is closing? What's your deal velocity? Right? Those basic revenue numbers. What are your margins? Bring it all back to the math. And then leave your team to convince you, if those numbers are off, that it's justifiable. Right? When we get caught up in marketing vanity metrics, what we end up doing is we end up chasing clicks, which brings us right back to 40,000 jobs lost.
Yes.
I saw lots of coverage about our budget yesterday. I was watching it as I'm on the government relations committee for a local board of trade. And so I knew we were going to be talking about it today. So I was watching the news come out. There's so much in that budget about investment and innovation and, growing the private sector, the private sector is what's going to, improve our economy. But what we choose to focus on is the clickbait, the cheap attention grabber. I love dating analogies because everybody gets them. It's a bit like a woman in her 20s deciding she wants a rich husband. And the way she's going to get a rich husband is she's going to go out to UBC. I'm in Vancouver. She's going to go out to UBC, best, university. She's going to go into the middle of the mall at Sauder Business School and strip naked.
Okay.
She's going to get a lot of attention, not so sure about closing the big husband. And so we got to stay away from those clickbaity numbers and chase business results. And I think once we start focusing on the business results, then we can figure out exactly where we are as a business today. And then when you know what problems you're trying to solve, now go look for the numbers that will help you solve those problems, right? So if your sales are coming in and your margins aren't there, okay, now we got to look at why our margins aren't there. Is our pricing wrong? Are our operations non-productive? Are we churning too much? And so we're spending too much to, replace every client we get is replacing two that left. What are we trying to do? But you've got to start with those heartbeat numbers. I call them your business vital signs. Know your vital signs. Let the rest figure itself out as you identify areas you need to resolve. What about you? Do you have any advice for confused but profitable?
I might.
Probably not what you thought a marketer was going to say, but yeah.
but that's also an assumption and a bias. What is a marketer, a strategic person going to wind up saying? And so I wrote down a bunch of words.
A strategic person's going to say what I said. No ego here.
But I'm not. I don't disagree with any of that. Like what I wrote down while we were discussing this for confused but profitable, it's really about starting with the vision, the bigger picture, defining what success actually looks like, and then going down to what are we actually going to focus on, not doing the vanity metrics, making sure that we understand what's behind the numbers, right? The numbers are the what. We need to understand the now what. Like numbers are great. Let's pick the smaller number. Let's simplify. Let's make sure that it's so that aligned to whatever our outcome is that we really want. And that could change and shift quarter by quarter. And then now what? We are running a business. So let's make sure that we are choosing numbers and metrics and discussing them in the context of the business and what we are going to do next, or how we're going to reduce risk, for instance. Whatever those numbers are telling us, let's find the story.
Yeah. I mean, I find today we have so much data, right? We have so much data, and we confuse data with information. Data is just a number. Information is when data points are connected to tell you a story. And so that's why I tell business owners, simplify. Just pick a few KPIs, monitor those for a while, and then start to ask questions about why those vital signs. When you go to the doctor, he takes your blood pressure. If it's above or below normal, he wants to know why. But he doesn't care about all the other numbers. He doesn't want to know about your hemoglobin. He doesn't want to know about, your calorie intake or your cholesterol. He just wants to know your blood pressure. Your blood pressure tells him what else to look at. Business is the same.
It is. Well, we are definitely something that we can have these conversations for a long time. I know we've done it, but we're at time. So we'll wrap up today.
Yeah.
Come back, see us next week for those who are listening and watching, because we do enjoy these conversations. And let us know what you thought. What metrics would you focus on?
Yeah, for sure. And if you have a question you want us to tackle, message us directly or pop it into the comments under this video, and we will look to get it in to our weekly uncertainty brief.
Awesome. Paula, great as always. Take care.
You too.